Part 1, The Emperor Who Built a Wall, Hadrian and Rome's Last Great Frontier. Imagine ruling the greatest empire the world had ever seen. An empire stretching from the scorching deserts of Arabia to the mist-covered hills of Britain. From the roaring Atlantic Ocean to the warm waters of the Black Sea. Tens of millions of people lived under a single government. Hundreds of cities paid tribute to one emperor. Nearly 30 legions stood ready to crush any enemy who dared challenge Rome. For generations, every emperor had followed one simple rule. Expand. Conquer. Never stop. Every victory brought new land, new wealth, new slaves, and greater glory. Rome believed its destiny was endless expansion. There would always be another kingdom to defeat, another frontier to cross, another triumph to celebrate beneath the marble arches of the eternal city. But then one man inherited this unstoppable machine. And instead of marching forward, he ordered Rome to stop. Not because the empire had become weak. Not because its armies had been defeated. But because he saw something no emperor before him had truly understood. Even the greatest empire on earth had limits. His name was Hadrian. And rather than building new battlefields, he built something no Roman ruler had ever attempted on such a scale, a wall. A massive stone barrier stretching across northern Britain, separating the Roman world from lands Rome could never fully conquer. Many saw it as a symbol of strength. Others believed it was an admission of fear. Nearly 2,000 years later, historians are still asking the same question. Did Hadrian's wall save the Roman Empire? Or did it mark the moment Rome accepted that its age of endless conquest was coming to an end? This is the story of the emperor who changed Rome forever. And of the greatest frontier the empire would ever know. To understand why Hadrian built his famous wall, we first have to understand the empire he inherited. When Hadrian became emperor in AD 117, Rome stood at the absolute height of its power. His predecessor, Emperor Trajan, had achieved what many Romans believed impossible. Through years of relentless military campaigns, he expanded Roman territory farther than ever before. Dacia, rich in gold mines, had fallen after brutal wars. Vast regions of Mesopotamia had been conquered from the Parthians. Roman banners flew over territories that earlier generations had only dreamed of reaching. Looking at a map, the empire seemed unstoppable. Its borders wrapped around the Mediterranean Sea like a giant stone ring. Roman roads stretched for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Goods flowed between continents with astonishing efficiency. Grain from Egypt fed Rome itself. Silver from Spain financed the imperial treasury. Olive oil from Hispania filled warehouses across Europe. Marble from Greece decorated temples and palaces. Merchants could travel thousands of kilometers while remaining under Roman law almost the entire journey. To the people living inside the empire, Rome must have appeared eternal. Its engineers built roads that survived for centuries. Its aqueducts carried fresh water across impossible distances. Its armies had become the most disciplined military force the ancient world had ever witnessed. Each legion was more than an army. It was an organized machine of engineers, builders, surveyors, doctors, blacksmiths, and elite soldiers trained to fight together with unmatched precision. When a Roman legion arrived, forests disappeared. Roads appeared. Bridges crossed rivers. Fortresses rose from empty ground. Entire cities followed. No civilization possessed such logistical power. Yet beneath this image of perfection, dangerous cracks were beginning to appear. Every new conquest created another border to defend. Every captured province required governors, tax collectors, roads, forts, and permanent garrisons. Victories made Rome richer. But they also made it larger. And the larger the empire became, the more difficult it was to control. Messages traveled slowly. A rebellion in one province could take weeks before news reached the emperor. Reinforcements might require months to arrive. Some frontiers stretched for thousands of kilometers across deserts, rivers, forests, and mountains. Maintaining them demanded enormous resources. The Roman army now numbered hundreds of thousands of men. Feeding them alone required staggering quantities of grain, livestock, equipment, and money. Every victory carried hidden costs. And those costs continued long after the celebrations ended. Few Romans wanted to admit it. But endless expansion had begun to create endless problems. When Emperor Trajan died during his return from campaigns in the east, uncertainty spread through the empire. His military victories had brought glory. But they had also left Rome dangerously overstretched. Then came Hadrian. Unlike many emperors before him, Hadrian had not built his reputation solely through conquest. He was a soldier, a scholar, an architect, a traveler, and above all, a man fascinated by the cultures that made up his empire. Born in Hispania, modern-day Spain, Hadrian grew up in a Roman world that extended far beyond Italy itself. He admired Greek philosophy almost as much as Roman military discipline. He studied architecture, engineering, literature, and law. Rather than spending every moment planning new invasions, he spent countless hours learning how cities functioned, how borders were defended, and how different peoples lived. Many senators considered these interests unusual for an emperor. Some even viewed them as signs of weakness. They expected another conqueror. Instead, they received perhaps the greatest administrator Rome would ever know. Hadrian asked a question few Roman leaders dared consider. What if preserving the empire was more important than enlarging it? That simple idea would change Roman history forever. Because while politicians in Rome argued over maps and glory, far away, at the northern edge of Britain, another reality was unfolding. Beyond the frontier lay a land unlike anything Roman soldiers had encountered elsewhere in the empire. Cold winds swept across endless hills. Dense forests swallowed entire patrols. Mist-covered valleys where enemies could disappear without warning. There were no great cities to conquer. No wealthy kingdoms waiting to surrender. Only fiercely independent tribes who had fought one another for generations, and who hated foreign occupation even more than they hated each other. To Rome, this was the end of the known world. To those who lived there, it was home. And soon, that distant frontier would force Hadrian to make one of the most controversial decisions in Roman history. Part 2, The Wild North. The land Rome could never truly conquer. The Roman world ended not with a city, but with a road. North of the frontier, civilization, as Rome defined it, simply vanished. The carefully paved highways disappeared into muddy tracks. Stone villas gave way to scattered wooden settlements. Markets, bathhouses, temples, and forums became rare, replaced by forests, hills, and endless stretches of open land where nature ruled far more completely than any emperor ever could. To many Romans, this was not merely another province waiting to be conquered. It was the edge of the civilized world. Beyond it lived tribes that Roman writers often described as fierce, unpredictable, and impossible to control. While those accounts were sometimes exaggerated, there was no doubt that northern Britain presented challenges unlike any Rome had faced elsewhere. The people of the north were masters of their landscape. They knew every river crossing, every hidden valley, every narrow mountain pass, every forest path invisible to foreign eyes. Roman soldiers marched in disciplined formations. The northern warriors did not. They struck suddenly, disappeared into the wilderness, and attacked again when their enemy least expected it. A victory against them rarely ended the conflict. Because there was never one army to defeat. Only countless clans. Some historians believe many of these northern tribes would later become known collectively as the Picts, a name that likely referred to their painted or tattooed bodies. Whether every tribe beyond Hadrian's future wall belonged to that group remains debated, but Roman soldiers remembered them for one reason above all. They refused to surrender. Unlike kingdoms such as Dacia or Egypt, there was no central capital whose capture would end resistance. Destroy one village, another would continue the fight. Defeat one chieftain. Another would emerge. Rome found itself fighting an enemy that seemed to dissolve into the landscape itself. The province of Britannia had already cost Rome enormous amounts of blood and treasure. Nearly 70 years earlier, Emperor Claudius had launched the invasion of Britain in AD 43. At first, the campaign appeared successful. Roman legions captured major settlements. Powerful tribes submitted. Roads spread across southern Britain. New cities flourished. Magnificent forts rose across the countryside. From a distance, the conquest looked complete. But appearances could be deceiving. The farther Roman armies advanced northward, the more difficult every mile became. The weather changed. Heavy rains turned roads into rivers of mud. Cold winds swept across open hills with relentless force. Supply wagons became trapped. Horses exhausted themselves climbing steep terrain. Even maintaining equipment became harder as constant moisture rusted armor and weakened wooden structures. Nature itself seemed determined to resist Rome. Yet nature was only part of the problem. The tribes knew exactly how to exploit these conditions. Instead of meeting Rome in large open battles, where the legions excelled, they attacked isolated patrols, supply caravans, and construction crews. Sometimes a Roman unit would vanish entirely. Only broken weapons or abandoned equipment hinted at what had happened. The frontier never truly became peaceful. When Hadrian became emperor, reports from Britain painted an increasingly troubling picture. Raids had intensified. Border forts were under constant pressure. Farmers living near the frontier feared every nightfall. Merchants avoided dangerous roads. Even experienced commanders admitted they could not guarantee security. Some Roman politicians proposed the obvious solution. Send more legions. Launch another grand campaign. Conquer everything north of Britannia once and for all. After all, wasn't expansion what Rome had always done? But Hadrian saw the situation differently. He understood something many senators refused to accept. Winning a battle was not the same as controlling a country. Every new conquest demanded permanent occupation. Permanent occupation demanded soldiers. Soldiers demanded food, roads, forts, weapons, horses, doctors, engineers, and constant supplies. The farther Rome advanced, the more expensive every victory became. Hadrian had spent years serving in the army. He had inspected distant provinces with his own eyes. Unlike rulers who governed from marble palaces, he traveled across the empire personally, speaking with governors, officers, engineers, and ordinary legionaries. He listened. He observed. And everywhere he went, he reached the same conclusion. Rome had become too large to keep expanding forever. Instead of dreaming about endless conquest, Hadrian began thinking like an architect. How do you protect something enormous? You strengthen its weakest points. Britain was one of those weak points. Not because Rome lacked brave soldiers, but because the frontier itself lacked order. Small forts stood scattered across the countryside. Patrol routes varied. Defensive lines were inconsistent. Enemies could slip through gaps, raid Roman territory, and disappear before organized forces could respond. Hadrian believed the frontier needed something entirely different. Not another invasion. A system. A permanent line that would define exactly where Rome ended. Such an idea was almost revolutionary. For centuries, Roman frontiers had constantly shifted as new lands were conquered. Building a fixed boundary almost suggested that the empire had reached its natural limit. Some senators quietly criticized the concept. They feared it projected weakness. Would enemies see a wall as proof that Rome had stopped advancing? Would future generations believe the empire had lost its courage? Hadrian disagreed. A strong frontier, he believed, is not a confession of fear, it is a declaration of control. In AD 122, Hadrian personally traveled to Britain. This was no ceremonial visit. The emperor wanted to inspect the frontier himself. Imagine the scene. The most powerful man on earth riding across muddy military roads, surrounded by cavalry escorts and senior officers. He passed weathered forts where soldiers had spent years defending the empire. He examined damaged watchtowers. He questioned commanders about raids. He studied the terrain with the eye of an engineer rather than merely a conqueror. Standing among the rolling hills of northern Britain, Hadrian made a decision that would echo through history. The frontier would no longer move. Instead, Rome would build. Not just another fort. Not just another defensive camp. But one of the greatest engineering projects the empire had ever attempted. A wall stretching from sea to sea. A barrier of stone, earth, timber, roads, forts, gates, and watchtowers unlike anything Britain had ever seen. It would require thousands of workers. Millions of stones. Years of relentless labor. Entire legions would become builders instead of warriors. The project would transform the landscape forever. Many believed such a construction was impossible. Others thought it unnecessary. But Hadrian had already made his choice. The age of endless expansion was over. The age of defending Rome had begun. And soon, thousands of hammers would echo across the northern hills as one of the greatest monuments of the ancient world began to rise, stone by stone. Part 3, Building the Greatest Wall Rome Ever Made. The engineering miracle that redefined an empire. The order spread across Britannia with remarkable speed. Every legion stationed in the province received new instructions. For once, they were not preparing for a campaign. They were preparing to build. Thousands of soldiers who had spent years mastering the art of war now picked up chisels, measuring rods, hammers, ropes, and shovels. The same disciplined army that could destroy cities would now create one of the greatest construction projects the ancient world had ever seen. This was no ordinary wall. It would become a declaration that Rome's greatest strength was not only its ability to conquer, but also its ability to organize, engineer, and endure. The planned frontier would stretch for nearly 80 Roman miles, about 117 kilometers, from the eastern coast at Wallsend on the River Tyne to the western shores near Bonis-on-Solway. From sea to sea. Across hills. Across valleys. Across rivers. Across rocky cliffs where most civilizations would never have attempted such an ambitious project. Modern visitors often imagine Hadrian's wall as a single uninterrupted barrier of stone. The reality was far more sophisticated. The wall was an entire military system. Behind it ran the military way, a carefully constructed road allowing soldiers, cavalry, and supply wagons to move rapidly from one section to another. At regular intervals stood mile castles, small fortified gateways placed approximately every Roman mile. Between every mile castle rose 2 watchtowers, giving guards an unobstructed view across the surrounding countryside. Larger forts housed hundreds of auxiliary troops, cavalry units, engineers, blacksmiths, doctors, and administrative staff. Nothing about the design was accidental. Everything served a purpose. Surveyors were the first to arrive. Using remarkably advanced instruments for their time, they measured distances with extraordinary precision. Wooden stakes marked the future line of the wall. Engineers studied the terrain. Whenever possible, they chose high ground. A soldier standing atop the completed wall would be able to see enemies long before those enemies could launch an attack. Nature itself became part of Rome's defenses. Steep ridges required fewer building materials. Cliffs created natural barriers. Valleys became controlled crossing points. Instead of fighting the landscape, Rome incorporated it into the design. The first months were consumed by preparation. Forests were cleared. Massive stones were quarried nearby whenever possible. Timber arrived from surrounding woodlands. Kilns burned day and night to produce lime for mortar. Roads expanded to accommodate an endless stream of wagons carrying supplies. Every detail required careful planning. Historians estimate that millions of individual stones would eventually become part of the completed frontier. Every one of them had to be cut, transported, positioned, and secured by hand. There were no cranes powered by engines, no hydraulic excavators, no trucks. Everything depended upon human strength, animal power, and Roman organization. The soldiers quickly settled into an exhausting routine. Before sunrise, horns echoed across the camps. Breakfast was simple: bread, cheese, porridge, sometimes salted meat. Then came another day of relentless labor. Some men cut stone inside noisy quarries. Others hauled massive blocks using sledges, ropes, rollers, and teams of oxen. Masons carefully shaped each stone until it fit perfectly beside the next. Carpenters erected scaffolding. Blacksmiths repaired broken tools. Engineers constantly inspected measurements. Even a small mistake could weaken an entire section. Unlike many ancient monuments built primarily by slaves, Hadrian's wall relied heavily upon the Roman army itself. Every legion accepted responsibility for specific sections. Inscriptions discovered centuries later still preserve the names of the units that proudly completed their assigned work. The wall became a source of military pride. A permanent reminder that these soldiers had left something behind far greater than a battlefield victory. Construction was anything but easy. Northern Britain rarely cooperated. Rain fell without warning. Cold winds swept across exposed hills. Mud slowed wagons carrying stone. Winter froze the ground solid. Some days visibility disappeared entirely beneath thick fog. Even experienced engineers struggled. Yet work continued. Roman discipline rarely allowed excuses. Each evening, officers inspected progress. Every missing stone. Every unfinished section. Every delay. Everything was recorded. Efficiency had become one of Rome's greatest weapons. The frontier itself varied depending on local conditions. In the eastern regions, abundant limestone allowed builders to construct an impressive stone wall reaching nearly 5 meters in height and roughly 3 meters in width. Farther west, where suitable stone proved scarcer during the early stages, engineers initially built sections from turf and earth before later replacing many of them with stone. This flexibility demonstrated one of Rome's greatest strengths. Plans could adapt without sacrificing the larger objective. The empire understood that perfection often required practicality. North of the wall lay another formidable obstacle. A broad ditch. Several meters wide and deep enough to slow any organized assault. An attacking force would first descend into the ditch, climb back out, only to face the towering wall itself. Meanwhile, Roman archers and slingers positioned above enjoyed a devastating advantage. To the south, another earthwork, known today as the Vallum, created additional control over movement within Roman territory. This was not simply a barrier against invaders. It regulated traffic. Merchants, travelers, messengers, refugees. Everyone entering or leaving the frontier passed through controlled gateways where soldiers inspected people, animals, and goods. The wall became something few ancient borders had ever achieved. A functioning checkpoint system. Life inside the fort slowly developed into small communities. Soldiers remained the heart of every garrison. But they were not alone. Merchants opened shops near the gates. Blacksmiths repaired weapons and horseshoes. Potters supplied cooking vessels. Families settled outside military compounds despite official regulations that once discouraged soldiers from marrying. Children grew up beneath the shadow of the wall. Languages mixed. Latin blended with local Celtic dialects. Imported wine from Gaul appeared beside British grain. Olive oil from Hispania stood beside locally brewed ale. The frontier became far more than a military line. It became a living society. As months turned into years, the wall stretched farther across the landscape. Visitors arriving from the south struggled to comprehend its scale. Stone disappearing into the horizon. Watchtowers standing like silent guardians. Forts rising at regular intervals. Roads connecting every defensive position with remarkable precision. Nothing like it had ever existed in Britain. For the northern tribes, the message was unmistakable. Rome was not leaving. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Perhaps not for generations. Yet even this extraordinary achievement could not solve every problem. A wall could delay an enemy. It could observe movement. It could control trade. It could strengthen the frontier. But it could not erase hatred. Beyond the stone barrier, the tribes continued watching. Waiting. Learning. And before long, Hadrian's magnificent frontier would face the very challenge it had been built to withstand. Part 4, Life on the Edge of the Empire. The wall was never the end of the war. When Hadrian's wall was finally completed, many Romans believed the problem had been solved. The empire had drawn its line. A mighty stone frontier stretched across northern Britain. Powerful forts stood ready. Watchtowers overlooked the valleys. Thousands of disciplined soldiers guarded every gate. Surely now, peace would follow. But frontiers rarely bring peace. They simply define where conflict begins. Every sunrise along the wall marked the beginning of another day of vigilance. Before dawn, trumpets echoed through the forts. Soldiers climbed ladders to the parapets. Watchmen who had stood guard throughout the freezing night handed over their posts to the next shift. The frontier never slept. Someone was always watching. Always listening. Always scanning the mist beyond the wall. Because danger could appear at any moment. Sometimes it was a lone scout. Sometimes a group of hunters. Sometimes an entire raiding party moving silently through the morning fog. No officer could afford complacency. One missed warning could cost dozens of lives. Life on the frontier differed greatly from the glorious image of military service often celebrated in Rome. There were no cheering crowds. No triumphal parades. No senators applauding victories. Instead, soldiers battled boredom almost as often as they battled enemies. Hours passed inspecting equipment. Repairing walls. Cleaning armor. Maintaining roads. Training with swords and shields. Feeding horses. Writing reports. Patrolling mile after mile through cold rain and relentless wind. Many recruits had dreamed of becoming heroes. Instead, they became builders, guards, engineers, policemen, customs officers, and farmers. Yet every man understood why his work mattered. Without the frontier, the empire behind him became vulnerable. Archaeologists have uncovered remarkable evidence of life along Hadrian's wall. Letters written nearly 2,000 years ago reveal something extraordinary. Roman soldiers complained. They joked. They invited friends to birthday celebrations. They requested warmer clothing. They asked their families to send socks, sandals, cloaks, and food. One famous letter even contains what is considered one of the earliest surviving handwritten invitations from a woman in Britain. These discoveries remind us of something often forgotten. The men guarding Rome's northern frontier were not legends. They were ordinary human beings. They missed home. They feared death. They laughed with friends. They worried about winter. They hoped to survive long enough to see their families again. Winter was perhaps the greatest enemy of all. The wind seemed capable of cutting through every layer of clothing. Rain soaked leather boots until every step became painful. Snow covered patrol routes. Ice made the stone walkways dangerously slippery. Smoke from countless fireplaces drifted above the forts while soldiers crowded together seeking warmth. Food remained plentiful by Roman standards, but fresh supplies became harder to deliver during severe weather. Despite these hardships, discipline never relaxed. Rome demanded readiness every single day, whether the enemy attacked or not. Beyond the wall, the northern tribes watched carefully. They studied Roman routines. They observed patrol schedules. They searched for weak points. The wall itself could not stop determined warriors forever. It had gates, roads, bridges, supply routes. Every opening represented an opportunity. Raiding parties often avoided direct assaults. Instead, they struck where Rome least expected. Small groups crossed rivers at night. Others slipped through isolated valleys. Some attacked livestock. Others ambushed merchants traveling between forts. Their goal was not conquest. It was disruption. Every stolen animal, every burned farm, every murdered messenger forced Rome to spend more soldiers protecting its own territory. The Roman response remained swift. Signal towers allowed warnings to spread rapidly along the frontier. Smoke by day, fire by night. Messengers on horseback raced between forts. Within hours, nearby garrisons could dispatch reinforcements. Cavalry units became especially valuable. Unlike heavily armored infantry, mounted auxiliaries could chase raiders across open country before they disappeared into the hills. Sometimes they succeeded. Sometimes they found only abandoned camps and fading footprints. The frontier remained a constant contest of movement and intelligence. Yet the wall did more than separate enemies. It also connected worlds. Merchants arrived from every corner of the empire. Wine from Gaul. Glass from the Rhineland. Olive oil from Hispania. Fine pottery from southern Britain. Leather goods. Iron tools. Jewelry. Spices. Even people from distant Syria, North Africa, and the Danube provinces found themselves serving or trading along Hadrian's frontier. Few places demonstrated Rome's diversity more clearly. Within a single fort, one could hear Latin, Celtic languages, Greek, and countless regional accents. Auxiliary units often recruited men from provinces thousands of kilometers away. Imagine a cavalryman born in modern-day Syria standing guard beside an infantryman from Spain while both defended Britain's northern frontier. Such scenes were entirely possible within the Roman Empire. Not every encounter with the northern tribes ended in violence. Trade quietly flourished despite official restrictions. Livestock crossed the frontier. Furs changed hands. Metal goods moved north. Local guides offered knowledge of dangerous terrain. Some tribal leaders negotiated with Roman commanders. Others accepted gifts in exchange for temporary peace. Diplomacy became another weapon. Rome understood that gold could sometimes accomplish what swords could not. Still, violence never disappeared completely. Generations grew up knowing only life beside the frontier. Young warriors beyond the wall inherited old grudges from their fathers. Roman recruits inherited the responsibility of defending territory they had never seen before joining the army. Neither side truly forgot the past. The wall remained both a shield and a reminder. A reminder that Rome had reached the limit of its expansion. Years passed. Then decades. Hadrian eventually died in AD 138, leaving behind one of the most secure frontiers the empire had ever possessed. His successors inherited not merely a wall, but an idea. Some embraced it. Others questioned it. One emperor, eager to restore Rome's tradition of conquest, looked north once again. His name was Antoninus Pius. Instead of accepting Hadrian's frontier, he ordered the construction of an entirely new wall even farther into Scotland. For a brief moment, it seemed as though Rome had abandoned Hadrian's cautious strategy. The empire would advance once more. But history had other plans. The northern tribes refused to submit. The new frontier proved difficult to defend. Within a few decades, Roman forces quietly withdrew. They returned to Hadrian's Wall. The emperor who had once been criticized for building a fixed frontier had been proven right. His wall endured because it stood where geography, logistics, and military reality came together. It was not the furthest point Rome could reach. It was the furthest point Rome could realistically hold. But even the greatest frontier could not stop time itself. Centuries later, a far greater threat than the tribes of Britain would begin to shake the foundations of the Roman Empire. And when Rome itself started to crumble, Hadrian's Wall would face its final test. Part 5, The Wall That Outlived an Empire. The Last Frontier of Rome. For nearly 3 centuries after Hadrian gave the order to build his great frontier, the wall remained one of the strongest defensive systems in the ancient world. Generations of soldiers came and went. Commanders changed. Emperors rose to power and disappeared into history. Some were wise. Others were tyrants. Some ruled for decades. Others lasted only months. Yet through every political crisis, every civil war, and every imperial succession, Hadrian's Wall continued to stand across the hills of northern Britain. It became something greater than a military structure. It became a symbol of Roman permanence. To those living nearby, it seemed as though the wall had always existed, and always would. But no empire lasts forever. By the 3rd century, the Roman Empire was beginning to show signs of exhaustion. The problems Hadrian had recognized decades earlier had not disappeared. In many ways, they had grown worse. The empire's borders stretched for thousands of kilometers, from the Atlantic coast to the deserts of the Middle East and the forests beyond the Danube. Every frontier demanded soldiers. Every soldier required pay. Every fort needed repairs. Every road had to be maintained. The cost of protecting Rome had become almost as great as the wealth the empire itself produced. Meanwhile, new enemies emerged beyond nearly every border. In the east, the powerful Sasanian Persian Empire challenged Roman dominance. Along the Rhine and Danube, Germanic confederations grew larger and more organized than ever before. Internal struggles made everything worse. Civil wars erupted with alarming frequency. Ambitious generals declared themselves emperor. Legions that should have defended the frontiers instead marched against fellow Romans. The empire was no longer fighting only its enemies. It was fighting itself. Even Britain could not escape these troubles. Although Hadrian's Wall remained heavily fortified, resources slowly became more difficult to replace. Some forts received fewer reinforcements. Repairs were delayed. Supplies arrived less regularly than before. The frontier still functioned. But the machinery that had once operated with perfect Roman efficiency was beginning to slow. The soldiers noticed it first. Equipment lasted longer than intended because replacements came late. Pay was sometimes delayed. Veteran units were transferred elsewhere, replaced by smaller garrisons. The wall still looked imposing. Yet behind its stone face, cracks were beginning to appear, not in the masonry, but in the empire that supported it. The 4th century brought even greater pressure. The Roman world faced wave after wave of migration and invasion. Entire peoples moved across Europe. The Huns pushed westward, forcing other tribes toward Roman territory. The empire struggled to respond to crises occurring simultaneously across multiple frontiers. Britain, once an important province, gradually became less of a priority. The heart of the empire now lay elsewhere. Rome needed soldiers in Gaul, in Italy, along the Danube, in the east. Every available legion became precious. Keeping thousands of men stationed on a distant island grew increasingly difficult. Then came the decision that changed everything. Around AD 410, imperial authority in Britain effectively came to an end. The Roman government informed local leaders that they would now have to organize their own defense. For nearly 400 years, Roman administration had shaped life across much of Britain. Now, it was gone. The empire that had once seemed eternal could no longer protect one of its own provinces. The soldiers stationed along Hadrian's wall faced an uncertain future. Some returned to the continent. Some settled nearby, marrying into local communities. Others simply disappeared into history. The frontier that had once marked the edge of the greatest empire on earth no longer separated Rome from its enemies. Because Rome itself had withdrawn. Nature slowly reclaimed what human hands had built. Roofs collapsed. Wooden gates rotted away. Barracks fell silent. Grass-covered parade grounds where thousands of soldiers had once trained. Trees began growing beside abandoned watchtowers. The sounds of marching boots disappeared. Only the wind remained. Yet the wall itself refused to vanish. Its massive stone foundations endured. Long after the empire had fallen, local people reused many of its carefully cut stones to build churches, castles, farms, roads, and villages. At first glance, this might seem like destruction. But in another sense, Hadrian's wall continued serving Britain long after Rome was gone. Its stones became part of new civilizations. Its legacy survived in entirely different forms. Centuries later, travelers crossing northern England encountered strange stretches of ancient masonry winding across hills and cliffs. Many could scarcely believe that people had built such a structure without modern machinery. Historians, archaeologists, and engineers began studying its construction. The more they learned, the more astonishing it became. Every measurement, every fort, every drainage system, every road, everything reflected the extraordinary discipline of Roman engineering. Today, large sections of Hadrian's wall still stand. Visitors from around the world walk the same paths once patrolled by Roman auxiliaries nearly 2,000 years ago. They climb the same hills. Look across the same valleys. Feel the same cold winds sweeping in from the north. It is one of the few places where the scale of the Roman frontier can still be experienced almost exactly as ancient soldiers knew it. But perhaps Hadrian's greatest achievement was not the wall itself. It was the idea behind it. Earlier emperors believed greatness meant constant expansion. Every generation had to conquer something new. Hadrian challenged that belief. He understood that true strength was not measured only by how much land an empire could seize. It was measured by how wisely it protected what it already possessed. History has often judged conquerors by the size of the territories they won. Yet Hadrian reminds us that preserving an empire may require even greater vision than creating one. His wall was never simply about keeping enemies out. It was about defining responsibility, establishing order, protecting millions of lives behind a secure frontier. In many ways, it represented the moment when Rome reached political maturity. The empire finally acknowledged that no power, no matter how great, could expand forever. There is a quiet irony in Hadrian's story. Many of his contemporaries criticized him for abandoning endless conquest. Some believed he lacked the ambition of Trajan. Others argued that walls were built by fearful rulers, not victorious ones. Yet history ultimately delivered its verdict. The empire briefly tried advancing beyond Hadrian's frontier under Antoninus Pius. It failed. Roman armies eventually returned to Hadrian's wall because it occupied the strongest defensive line available. The emperor who had been accused of thinking too cautiously had understood Britain's geography better than anyone else. Sometimes restraint is not weakness. Sometimes it is wisdom. As the sun sets over the hills of northern England today, the remaining stones cast long shadows across the landscape. They no longer divide two worlds. No soldiers stand watch. No signal fires burn through the night. No horns announce the changing of the guard. Only silence remains. And yet, those ancient stones continue telling a story. Not merely about war. Not merely about architecture. But about one of history's greatest lessons. Every empire, no matter how powerful, eventually reaches a moment when it must choose between endless ambition and lasting stability. Hadrian made his choice nearly 2,000 years ago. His empire eventually fell. But the wall he built still stands. Sometimes, the strongest monument an empire leaves behind is not the land it conquered, but the wisdom it discovered too late. The end.